So again, high level, just some terms which will help kind of set context for the next couple of things I want to go through quickly. So Epic is the system we use. You've probably heard of that. A lot of healthcare companies use this system now, especially in Cincinnati. If you ever hear people talk about Epic, it's probably the largest healthcare software company in the world. They're actually global. If you ever hear the term SBO, that's single billing office. And again, I'll get into that in just a minute. Guarantor is a term, that's the person responsible for the bill. So think about if you had kids, obviously we're not going to bill a 4-year-old, right? So mom or dad would be listed as the guarantor. Whereas as long as you're 18 or older or an adult, if you don't have, other reasons not to be, you would also be listed as your own guarantor also. A subscriber, the term subscriber is a term we use to say who carries the insurance. So for example, my husband carries the insurance for our family. So anytime I would register, I would have to give his name and information because he's the one primarily on the policy. And then I would be obviously a beneficiary on that policy. Eligibility, we talked a little bit about that, but that's a process too where we run your demographics and the insurance information you give to us, not unique to TriHealth. Most, I should say, systems do this, and it basically pings up against an electronic database to validate that you have Anthem, Blue Access insurance or whatever you said, because that's a very critical part of the process to making sure they're going to pay the bill or pay their portion of the bill accurately and hopefully save you as the subscriber headaches, from them not paying it or denying it. A claim, that's the term we use in our in shop, if you will. We send an electronic claim to the provider, whereas we bill or send you all a statement. So just again, a little bit of nuance in language. Explanation of benefits, that is what your insurance company sends you, okay? Not to be confused with the statement, right? So your insurance company is going to send you an explanation of benefits every time you have a service, and that's what's going to tell you based on your individual policy what the allowable was, meaning what they agreed or negotiated, where you stand on your deductible, what your estimated out-of-pocket is based on that claim, right? And again, not to be confused with what we actually send you. So an explanation of benefits is not a bill, and they should always say this is not a bill. But a lot of times what people do is when they get their statement or their bill from us, is then they're going to compare that to their explanation of benefits and make sure they're aligning with what you're seeing, right? Now, what's important to know, which you may or may not know, is in a lot of cases, insurance companies can go back and adjust things, even as far back as a year or two, right? So a lot of times we might, even as a surprise to us, all of a sudden get, they might decide to do a mass claims adjustment. And all of a sudden we start getting, new information on a claim that we thought was handled, 6 months, a year ago or whatever. And so I share that, again, that's not unique to TriHealth, but if you ever all of a sudden think you've paid for this service a long time ago, and then all of a sudden, months down the road or even a year, you're getting something that says to the contrary, don't assume the hospital messed something up. The hospital's likely reacting to some new information they got from the insurance company. Wish that wasn't the case, but it happens. It doesn't happen every single day, but just know that it does periodically happen. Prior authorization or pre-authorization, again, that's another critical process. You just want to make sure you understand your benefits. And for example, if you're having an MRI or a CT or surgeries, a lot of the higher cost items typically will require some type of authorization prior to having the service done, and you simply want to validate that process has happened. Most of the time the physician or the hospital takes ownership of that, but it's just a good question to say, hey, has the authorization been secured on this before you go back for the test or the procedure?
And who's going to tell you that?
They should, and again, depending on what system you go to, If we have in our process is if we don't have an authorization, at least by the day before, and again, we're at the mercy of the insurance company, we would be calling your physician office and trying to get a hold of you as a patient, at least by the day before, if not sooner, to say, hey, we wanted to give you a heads up. We are still working to get this authorization, but as of this moment, we don't have it, and the insurance company might be telling us they have 3 to 5 days to respond. So again, we're at the mercy of the insurance company. So what we always try to do is work things or get the process started as quickly as we can. But again, we don't have any control over the payer.
Okay, can I ask?
Absolutely, yes.
Right, so last summer, my doctor wanted me to get a CT for my lung. I had pneumonia. Okay. So I called. He wanted me to go to Jewish, and I had called Jewish and told them, okay, is this authorized? And the lady said, oh, sure, it's authorized. Well, how do I know that she really knows? I mean, I didn't get anything in writing.
Right.
It's just her say so.
Yeah, usually you don't. Sometimes, and again, most of the time you don't. Sometimes your insurance company, again, they're all different. Sometimes they may send you a letter that just says, just so you know, for your records, we did authorize this test. But that's what I'm saying. I would ask the question because it'll be documented in the system. So either when you talk to the physician office or to the hospital, because really if the procedure is being done at the hospital, the onus is on the hospital to make sure it's been secured. So you would ask the scheduler or the registrar, is this indeed authorized? And they should be able to tell you, yes, and here's the authorization number.
So there is a number.
Absolutely. We document it because we actually put it on the claim so that they know they told us that they would pay for it.
So that's a takeaway. That
Absolutely.
There's an
authorization number.
That you should ask for.
Yep. Yeah. And again, not all tests or procedures require them, but make sure you look at your insurance to know that. But if it's a higher dollar test, chances are it does require one. Yes, sir.
I wonder if some of this stuff is available on my charts. Like, for example, I say I'm supposed to be going in for an MRI, and that needs to be pre-authorized. Is there some place in my charts where I could go and see? I know I can go and see I'm scheduled for that process. I'm supposed to be there on Tuesday. Is there somewhere where it would say
approved?
This is going to be paid for?
Yeah. There's not today, but we'll take that down as a takeaway to see what the possibility of that is. And I'm thinking out loud, more so as our team gets that authorization, there might be a way for us to at least convert that into, not necessarily that you would need to see the number, although you could totally see it, to a more of a approved or denied or in process status. So I see Rita taking that down. We will take that back as feedback to see if we can do it, but it does not exist today. But we can certainly look at that. The challenge gets into, it's all of the all or nothing. So I wouldn't want you to go in there and if you don't see it, then assume that it's not approved because it may not even require an approval. So it goes into how do we build the logic so we don't cause unnecessary harm if you don't see it in there. Does that make sense? But it's a very good suggestion, and we will take it down and see if we can potentially solve for that. Okay, so really quickly here. So high level, what I want you guys to understand just about the what I'll call the billing or the statement process, okay? So at the point, assuming you have insurance in play, at the point that the insurance company sends us back a response and tells us, okay, and I'm going to pick on you again, Ethan. Ethan owes $50 on this test or whatever. That information comes back to us, right? And then we are going to send you a statement. Now, the way TriHealth is set up, we combine our hospital and physician services that are TriHealth. So if you're seeing a TriHealth physician, we combine those onto a single statement versus sending you a single statement for every single time you come in. We also combine it to the point that you get one statement every 28 days. So if you have an account with us, you're going to get, and again, high level, you're going to get 3 statements, and I'm actually going to flip to this next slide because it'll show you a little bit differently visually. So you're going to get 3 statements from us kind of under process 1, okay? So every 28 days, you're going to get a new statement. and I say we print it every 28 days. Obviously, depending on the mail or whatever, you might get it a couple days after that. And on that, again, you'll keep getting those until you've either engaged with our customer service team, so that's the 569-6117 number you dial, to either pay online, send in a check, however you pay your bills, or you call to set up a payment plan, okay? So until you engage with us and either pay in full or set up on a payment plan, we're gonna keep sending you a statement, right? If by basically day 83 of statement dates, if your account is still unresolved, meaning you haven't paid or you haven't called us to tell us what's going on, or called to say, hey, I'm concerned about this, do you have financial assistance, which I'll address here in a minute as well, we're gonna move your account to another process, and you're likely gonna get a packet from a company called Care Payment, okay? Because what we're assuming here in this is if you haven't paid or if you haven't called, likely you have financial anxiety, right? And we are now going to send you a different option to consider. Now, what I hope through the end of all of this is that I don't want you to have that financial anxiety and fear and questions. I want you to call us and engage us so we can help you. Like the gentleman that talked about, CJ. So CJ is one of our financial counselors. And we meet with patients, we screen you and see what things you might be eligible for based on a qualification perspective. So Care Payment is think of it as a 0% interest loan that gives you some even longer payment terms based on your balance if necessary. No cost to you. It's something TriHealth wants to do for its patients. If, again, for the larger bills, if you're having trouble financially, we can give you a longer payment term. In this day 1 through day 83 process, in most cases, we can actually go up to 18 months if necessary, again, depending on balance, on a payment plan. So just so you know, that's one of the financial options we have. So again, I don't want patients, on top of everything you're dealing with, stressing, thinking, oh my goodness, I got this $1,000 bill that I got to pay tomorrow. We will work with you, and we have other options for you. And then, just in full transparency again, if by day 133, so think about how much time, we're trying to give patients the opportunity to engage with us, pay their bills, set up a payment plan, whatever, apply for financial assistance. If nothing's happening by day 133, then that's when your account moves into what we call the collections process, and you'll start getting phone calls or letters from other people. I'm here to tell you, please don't let that happen. Engage with us prior to that so we can help you and get it figured out.
And you guys,
Yes,
we touch base with patients prior to that, so we make calls.
Absolutely. So part of this, what you'll see, is all between this process, day 1, or actually you even get them after that, but all of this time, you're going to periodically get what we call courtesy phone calls. And that is the primary role of that, is to make sure you got your statement, because obviously there could be mailing issues, right? So we want to make sure you got your statement. I loved you put a nice plug out there for us for MyChart. So if you come to TriHealth, we have what you call MyChart, which is the patient portal within Epic, where you can also see your statements and stuff now as well and pay online. But you're getting phone calls periodically to see if you have questions and or make sure you've got your statement in that process.
I wanted to say that this is really wonderful that you have all of this worked out where patients and their spouses and everybody who's dealing with all these problems can hopefully navigate through all this. I want to give you an example of what happened to my wife and I. This goes back 18 years ago. Now, none of this was done for us, and how tragic this all turned out. My wife went in for an outpatient surgery, and she should have gone home that afternoon. She was in intensive care for weeks. And in the big picture of it all, she's been in the hospital over 900 days in 18 years. It is absolutely horrible. My wife's life is horrible. It still is not okay after all these years. Why I bring this up, because of what you're saying here. I would take her to the emergency room. I would take her to the admissions office at University Hospital so many times, even the very next day, and they would say, and what is your address, where do you live? And we would say, we live in Harrison, and they say, well, I have your address at Luther Lane in Cleves. And we were just there the day before. We had the admissions people I don't know how many times this was, probably 20, 30, 40 times in the course of months of time. We don't live in Cleves. We live in Harrison, and they always had it wrong. I think that's where the beginning of it all was, but it got much worse because this whole thing where you send statements or you have somebody calling, nothing like that happened. I paid thousands of dollars. I cashed in all of my investments, all my stocks, everything I had to pay all of her medical bills. And this is in the very beginning, the very first year. There were so many bills that had to be paid. Of course, as you probably know, on an early Sunday morning, a collection agency called because they know you're going to be at home. This is a whole new experience for me. And they say, Mr. Gilman, you owe $200 and you have not paid. There's only $200, and I had paid my entire life savings and all of my investments were cash. I paid thousands of dollars, and this was only for a measly $200, and I gave the credit card number and I paid for this, and they ruined my credit. And this is where this is great that I can have this human contact with really wonderful people that are here tonight. So if you hear something like this in your hospital of somebody like me that this has had what happened to me, I talked to those people so many times. My wife, who was terribly sick, called so many times, and I kept saying, I need to speak to a supervisor like one of you.
Right.
That's what I use, supervisor, even though that's not your title exactly. And I said, I need to talk to somebody about this.
Yep.
My credit is ruined. We moved, and this bill was sent to the wrong
address,
house, or it was never sent at all. It was only $200.
Right.
Look at all the history of all the money I have sent to University Hospital. I paid the bills. I didn't get this bill. And look what happened to me. And finally, some really nice person, a supervisor, stepped in and took care of it. And whatever she did, she corrected our credit because I owed so much money. Like I said, 900 days of a hospital, intensive care, emergency room visits in the middle of the night. One of my things I was going to do, I was going to refinance the house and take all the equity out of the house. But my credit was ruined. They're not going to let me refinance because I am a very bad risk. And I just say this because you can just understand maybe what happens to people.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm a teacher, my wife is a nurse, we have good jobs and good income before all this stuff happened, you know?
Right.
And, you know, it was just a horrible
experience,
thing.
yeah.
So when people ask for your help,
Yeah.
you can think of me.
Absolutely.
It is just
And obviously, I'm
terrible,
so
terrible
sorry to
thing
hear that.
happened.
Yep, I'm so sorry to hear that was your experience. And I think that's absolutely the point. I mean, all of us in this room from TriHealth, and we all talk to patients just like yourself. And obviously, we always hope it doesn't have to get escalated to us, but that's what we're here for. And absolutely, when we hear these, it's like, oh my goodness, what can we do? Obviously, you know, hopefully we'll apologize, but it's about learning, where did we drop the ball? Like, how did this happen, so we can try to prevent it, obviously, for the next patient and fix the system. So to this point, we are reaching out, we are making contact, we're making phone calls. So, you know, please don't take them as harassing phone calls. They're really meant to make sure you did get your statement. Because again, you know, data entry mistakes can happen, and we want to catch them as soon as possible to make sure you can continue to get your statements and engage with us. This is just really quick as I lead into the last couple slides here. And again, this is sad, but this is how much of the financial experience is impacting the overall patient experience. So New England Journal of Medicine basically says, you know, 1/3 of Americans don't trust the healthcare system because of the fear with the rising costs of healthcare, right? And so what we're seeing, and again, how the system is evolving, is we're changing the way the system is going to be paid, right? And it's going to encompass the quality outcomes, and the patient experience is part of that variable. So to add a little more color to this, so again, this is my key takeaway here. Engage with us. Please don't let your fear stop you from calling us. We want to work with you. There's lots, and this isn't even necessarily an exhaustive list. So what our financial counselors do is we engage with you, and we do a financial screening. We have our financial assistance applications are on the back of our statements, so we're trying to be as transparent as possible. You can go onto our website and get the application. And then we have financial counselors that actually report up through Rita's area, and they will either call you by phone, they can meet you in person, and they will collect your financial history and income. And then they're going to look, because there are experts, right? They know, based on looking at that, if you will, because it is, based on eligibility, what you might qualify for from a financial assistance perspective. So some people might be eligible for Medicaid. You might be eligible for HCAP, which is an Ohio Care Assurance Program that hospitals pay into. And again, it's going to be for your lower income patients that would be eligible. Then we have, charity care. So again, based on federal poverty levels, we have a charity care policy that people may or may not qualify for. And then, kind of as a last case resort, if you don't qualify for any of those things, we also offer payment plans. And I just talked to you about, in most cases, we can go up to 18 months kind of on that first pass. But if you have larger bills, we can go even further than 18 months with our care payment option. So again, I have to put the plug in. So you've heard how complicated the system is. So obviously those of you that are able to pay timely, do pay timely. We really do appreciate that. It does save a lot of extra administrative work on the back end when that happens. So again, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you if you're able to do so. And I think my last slide, just a couple of things that we're working on. And again, I love the feedback and the suggestion from the gentleman in the back about, how can we potentially inform you all if an authorization is on file. So we're always working to expand our MyChart functionality. Again, we want to get to the point where we are easy to use. And again, I don't want to make assumptions. I don't know how many of you use your mobile phones. I know I use my phone a lot. Anything I can do very quickly with a couple clicks or pay a bill, I love. But whether you want to do that in MyChart, or if you like paper, or you like calling and you pay in by phone, all of those options, we try to be as flexible as possible. As I shared a little bit earlier, we are working to launch our patient estimates. So again, we think that'll be a very well-received program to really inform you as a patient, so prior to having your service what your estimated out-of-pocket's going to be, and then you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to proceed with the test. And or prepare, or plan better, if you will. Better customer service. So again, a lot of us in the RevCycle leadership team are relatively new to TriHealth, and our goal is to constantly improve, right? So we're always learning from experiences, from patient calls, where did we mess up? How can we fix it? What was the root cause? And that's our goal. I already talked about mobile options. We talked about this. Jason hit on this. We are working to become a high reliable organization because we want to have you have an exceptional experience, and most importantly, not experience any harm that could have been prevented. And then again, service recovery, as I said it before, I wish I could tell you we're perfect. We are not, but we absolutely care wholeheartedly about you all. And if we mess up, we will own it and we will work to make it right. I know that was a lot of information in my time. I know. I'm worn out, right? I hope this was helpful. Any other last minute questions? I appreciated the dialogue. Yes, Ethan.
Okay, are we out of time? Well, in general, I guess, a few years ago when Obamacare was just rolling out, I went to a lecture by Ezekiel Emanuel trying to promote Obamacare. And he talked about value-based medicine and all this stuff. And years later, we see Obamacare's, I don't know, a lot of people just hate it. It certainly raised our premiums like crazy. But I guess the point is, I'm trying to understand, what are your incentives? I come from a country, Israel, where there's universal health coverage.
Yeah.
My mom spent, weeks and weeks in the hospital, never got a bill. It was done. And here we have to deal with all these complications. I don't understand how in the 21st century we can have such a complicated and inefficient system that costs $3 trillion.
Right.
Okay, and so I think that in general, it's very confounding. But what are your incentives really to get better? Because you are, after all, a for-profit organization, yes?
Nope,
No?
we're nonprofit.
Well, but you have to at least meet
So
the
any
bills.
margin we make goes back into the investments of the facilities,
Okay,
the
so maybe
machines, and stuff like that.
Talk a little bit about that. What are the incentives really
Yep.
for improving the efficiency of the system.
Yeah, so I kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but kind of really quickly to recap, because the country of the United States, we obviously don't have the system Israel has, because we have multi-payers in the mix, because Americans like choice, right? So that in and of itself complicates the system. But the way that the system is evolving is they're going to not just pay us simply because we provided the service. If we don't hit certain patient experience scores, so when Jason asked you all, how many of you have filled out a patient experience score, you know, our scores are going to have to be at certain levels as just one element for Medicare to pay us. And in some cases, if they don't hit certain levels, they're actually going to penalize us.
So is Medicare the organization that
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
monitors?
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
the big cheese?
Yes,
Yes.
yep.
And then all the other payers, all the other insurance
They follow
companies come
suit.
They typically follow suit,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep.
So Medicare, so the Centers for Medicaid, so CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, kind of like set the precedent, and then typically the commercial payers will follow suit, to Jason's point. So we know it's coming more robustly down the pike for the system, if you will, but Medicare has already started this process. So like I said, we are working hard to improve our patient experience. We are engaged to become a highly reliable organization. So we're working with companies that have specialized in the airline industry, and you talk about safety and building processes that are fail-safe and fail-proof. Because again, there's nothing more important at the end of this equation than the human and the patient that is, you know, receiving this care. So, and then when we start to do all of that, we don't make as many mistakes. We don't have to spend all of our time, you know, making hours and hours of phone calls to insurance companies, because we start to prove our value. We start to change the rules. I shared the good news about Anthem, because we're already demonstrating the progress. Anthem's actually entertaining a program they're going to call Green Pass, where they're going to start to relax some of the pre-certification rules for us. And the onus is on us. Kind of think about it, and I don't want to go down a whole other path, about a capitated model where, you know, we get a certain amount of money and we have to manage you, and we have to keep you well and keep you out of the hospital.
Oh, that's the European model.
Yeah.
So Medicare is driving this.
Correct.
Essentially. You're being
Yes.
driven by Medicare.
Absolutely. Yep.
But at the end of the day, what's really important is that if we're not competitive, we die.
Yeah.
As a health system, as a hospital.
Yeah.
The most important thing to take away is everyone has a choice.
Right.
And you look at the systems that are in the city, we are all competing for the same patients
Right.
at the end of the day.
Right.
And if we don't perform well, you'll go somewhere else.
Right.
And so we have to up our game, and you see that throughout the city. You're seeing new buildings, new services, new marketing, and it's because everyone is competing for the same patient, quite honestly. But the important thing is, if you come to us and you have terrible care or terrible experience, you're not going to come back. And if you have that throughout the community, all of a sudden we cease to exist. So along with the oversight of CMS to make sure that we are caring for the community and for population health, we also have an interest as a business, a viable business, that in order for us to sustain ourselves, we've got to up our game. And that's the transition and the transformation that all the health systems are going through now. You go into any hospital now and you go into a patient room, you have people who talk to you, your nurses talk to you, they're nice, the doctors are nice to you most of the time. Whereas 10 years ago, doctor came in, did what he needed to do, wouldn't answer any questions, walked out, even the nurses a lot of times. But patient experience means everything anymore because you have a voice. And so, you know, another thing real quickly with the whole issue on the bills. Every health system wants to provide you with service and make sure that you take care of your bills. If you get to a point, and this is something I know because I've been in the industry a long time. If you continue to escalate and not get anybody who wants to hear from you and won't help you, you've asked for supervisor over and over again. Greatest thing that you can do, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Write a letter to the CEO. that gets someone's attention within the organization. Now, again, this is the last resort. But,
And at TriHealth, I would ask that you come to Doug or myself, actually Nancy, Doug, or myself, right? Yeah,
but.
because we
again,
do care and we will listen, yeah.
A lot of people just get frustrated and they give up.
Right.
And the reality is, you just haven't found the right person in the organization who gets it and who understands, hey, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with their lives, their livelihood, their health. And there's a ton of people in that organization who do get it. You just maybe have not gotten the right person.
And I have just a small caveat on that. If you get your care at TriHealth, I brought my business card.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
am more than willing to take your call. I work cases myself. So I am not a manager that says I don't want to be involved. I keep an active caseload, an active roster. I have a cell phone that's on 24 hours a day, and I tell people you can call me anytime of the day. I talk to people after their cases are done, because if you don't get perfect care from us, then I'm not doing my job, my team's not doing their job, and we as a system aren't doing our job. So please feel free. I will give all of you my business card if you want, because it is that important to us that we get it right.
And don't take me wrong, I'm going to do the same thing. You can call me directly. I don't have a business card, but we'll get you the information. This is just one of these things, and it's not necessarily a TriHealth thing, because obviously you've got people here who care, and we have a number of layers within the organization. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah, outside of TriHealth, to Doug's point, that's as high as you can go if you're not being heard.
Yeah. Did you, I know we're wrapping, do you have one last question here? So we're wrapping up here, yeah.
We're all competing for this business, you would say. But I find that kind of hard to rationalize with when they say all the time there is a shortage of doctors.
There
So
is.
if there is, then
Yeah.
what's the competition? I don't get it.
Yeah, so, I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, to Doug's point earlier, I mean, in theory, we'd all love for every single person in Cincinnati to come to TriHealth, right? But there's only so much capacity, you know, because you have certain doctors that, you know, align. And so we talked about it earlier, part of that challenge is in certain specialties, it's an even bigger access problem. So for example, neurology, dermatology, there's a shortage of those doctors nationally and then even locally. So when you only have a couple of doctors, you know, and you have a very large population that needs that service, you're unfortunately waiting for weeks or months or, you know, whatever to get in for an appointment. And that's unfortunate. That's what we as a health system are working to do, is try to bring in new physicians, you know, make new relationships so that we can create better access, so you can get in for your appointments faster and get answers to your issues. But it's not, again, it's not something that can be solved overnight, because as you know, it takes a long time to become a doctor. But because of how crazy healthcare is, you know, there's been less people that want to be doctors and that want to be nurses, because it's exhausting and it's hard work. And the quality of life isn't always great, you know, because you work a lot. But you know, institutions are getting creative about how they get people in the younger generations to want to go into healthcare to try to fix the shortage, you know, problem into the future. But it won't be solved overnight. So I wish I had a magic button. I don't. But thank you all so very much for allowing us to come. It was a pleasure to be here. Anything we can do to help, we're happy to serve.